Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to episode 0 of season 12 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown. This is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. I think kickoff episodes will be a thing from now on because I did enjoy kicking off. Well, I started with Wildflowers, and that was the first one I did a bit of preamble for. And then I carried that on with songs and music from She's the One because there was the movie to talk about with that one. But I think staging and setting up a little bit about the album before we get into the songs, I feel like it might work. So that's what this episode is. Now, last week in the season wrap episode for season 11, John Paulson and I talked about songs and music from She's the One potentially being the most underrated album Tom recorded, and that he wasn't a massive fan of it. But Echo is also a difficult album for Tom for a lot of very different reasons. It's also unique in the Heartbreakers catalogue in at least one way. So let's talk about this album a little. Echo continues Tom's run of releasing 15-song albums, and this one clocks in at 62 minutes and 6 seconds, at a time when the single was definitely king, and albums were starting to go out of vogue, weren't they, a little bit. Echo was the band's last of 3 collaborations with producer Rick Rubin, and was also the last to feature contributions from Howie Epstein, who, as we all know, tragically passed away in 2003. So the first thing you notice about Echo is the cover. There's a distance between the band and the viewer. The subjects are slightly blurred, and there's some shrubbery branches in the foreground that take away the focus. Add to this the image being in black and white, the first of Petty's monochromatic album covers, and the glaring omission of Howie Epstein, and even before you drop the needle on this one, you feel a sense of cold unease and genuine absence. As if to accentuate Howie's absence rather than hide it, Tom, Mike Campbell, and Ben Montench are featured on the left side of the cover, with Scott Thurston alone on the right side, or with a big hole where Howie presumably would have been framed. Howie at this time, of course, was fighting for his life against a destructive heroin addiction that would finally claim him in 2003. And despite waiting for Howie to turn up for the album cover shoot, Tom eventually gave the order to proceed without him. And this tension is also captured in that vague, disoriented photograph which graces the cover of the album. 4 days after Tom died, author Paul Zollo wrote of Tom's life and his experience of working with him on Conversations with Tom Petty. He relates the following hugely poignant story of Tom discussing Howie's death, saying, "Tom told the Howie story slowly. It was clear it was really hard for him to talk about. The darkness was in the room like a giant boulder weighing down on him, yet he persisted and told me all the sad details. He got the news of Howie's death from Dana. It crushed him. Even though we'd all seen it coming, he said, it's still really hard to believe when it happens." Paul then recounts that Tom did something that he'd never before done after one of their conversations. He called me up. In his soft drawl, he said, "Hey, would you mind doing me a favor? I was doing some thinking about our Howie talk today, and it just seemed way too dark and sad. Would you mind terribly throwing that all out so we can start over?" That said so much about Tom and what a genuinely kind guy he was, and also such a loyal friend. It hurt him that the only portrait of Howie that he painted was this dark, desolate one, which left out all the good parts. It mattered so much that he wanted to start over completely, which is exactly what we did. The second time around, which is the part used in the book, began and ended with happier memories of Howie. So I wanted to relay that story, or that part of the book, for those people who haven't read it, because I think it fills in a part of the human portrait of Tom that I don't dig into in the same depth as his music. Echo was released on the 13th of April 1999 as Tom's last record of the 20th century. It reached number 10 on the Billboard chart and hit number 43 in the UK. It was also certified gold by the RIAA in July of the same year it was released, only 3 months after it hit gold certification. Now, I said off the top that this album is unique in a very specific way. It's the only song in the Heartbreakers catalogue that features someone other than Tom on lead vocals. In this case, Mike Campbell, on a song he wrote solely, I Don't Want to Fight. And I think this might actually be the only time Mike's voice is heard on any studio track, lead or otherwise. And that makes it all the more enjoyable that he's gone on to become the frontman of his own band in the last 7 or 8 years. Coming out from under Tom's enormous shadow couldn't have been easy, and he speaks in his book about the regard he held for Tom as a vocalist. So I'm actually currently a third of the way through Heartbreaker, Mike's memoir, And I'll be sitting down soon with the wonderful Eric Senich to discuss it on his excellent podcast, Booked on Rock. Now, I've been on Booked on Rock before. I was a guest a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago or something, just to talk about books about Tom in general. So I'm looking back to go onto the show to chat with my friend Eric about a very specific book written, the first book, obviously written by one of the Heartbreakers. The album is also notable for seeing Tom release Free Girl Now as a free MP3 download, making him only the second major label artist at that point to do this. It's a little weird to read that in 2025 or to write it when streaming has overtaken physical media in virtually every way for most people. Now, I'm one of those dinosaurs that still really enjoys listening to real records on real turntables, but the proliferation of streaming services renders the idea that making a free MP3 available for download was somehow subversive and innovative somewhat anachronistic. This was deemed such a risky strategy by Warner Brothers that they actually had Tom pull that download after only 2 days. Of course, 1999 was the age of Napster, so the horse had well and truly bolted before the label closed the gate. But it's really interesting to think back to that time when now almost the entirety of human creativity is available on a 5x7-inch device. Like songs and music from She's the One, somewhere around half of the songs on Echo were never played live. And Tom tells Paul Zollo, I was kind of glad to get to another place after Echo. I was kind of glad to get somewhere else. I don't know why, but I kind of felt we came back into the sun after that. And this idea of a darkness hovering over this period in Tom's life definitely permeates through elements of this record. And to help me unpack some of the emotional baggage of Echo, I'm going to be chatting to my friend Nick Apostolaris, who has appeared on the show a couple of times already, to get his sort of professional thoughts on, where Tom's head may have been during this time. I'll also be chatting to my brother in the next couple of weeks to discuss our musical upbringing and to throw my petty 8 at him. That one promises to be a really fun episode, and I hope that you guys enjoyed as much as we're bound to. We haven't recorded it yet. In addition, I'm hoping to bring a couple of new fans to the show to share their experiences, and I've got a couple of other potential guests lined up. As well as I'm pretty sure I'll be chatting to Amelia McLean again because I think her album should be coming out hopefully in the next month. So we have some returning guests to look forward to and some new ideas for this season that I will reveal as we go, as well as Mike's book to talk about, of course, with my friend Eric Senich, as I said, and the Heartbreakers Beach Party movie to cover, which I will be doing with John Paulson and maybe my good friend Corey Morissette, because Corey works in TV and film. So I think it would be kind of interesting to get a professional perspective on the sort of the filmic aspect of it, as well as the sort of the narrative and the behind the scenes stuff. I do hope you enjoy season 12, after which we'll be 3/4 of the way through this main catalogue. This really has ended up being the little podcast that could. The Tom Petty Project is a proud member of the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Go check us out at deepdivepodcastnetwork.com. I'm sure you'll find something there that you like. Check out my other podcast, Seaside Pod Review, a Queen podcast that I do with my best friend Randy Woods. And also check out The Ultimate Catalog Clash. We are 7 albums through season 5 of that show. We just discussed Colour by Numbers by Culture Club. And next week, we'll be dropping our first of 2 episodes talking about She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper, an album that I absolutely love. Also, make sure you check out The Power of Positive Geeking, which is Corey's one of his other podcasts that talks about all the films and all the TV shows that we love. It's a really fantastic show, and I think you'll all enjoy it. So please go check that out. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at The Tom Petty Project, and on Blue Sky at Tom Petty Project. Go follow, like, subscribe as applicable, and again, please leave a review or a rating if you haven't already, including on Spotify. Keep talking to me on social media, and I'll keep reading out as many of your comments on the show as I can. And as a weekly reminder, the Tom Petty Project is not affiliated with the Tom Petty Estate in any way. So if you're looking for Tom's music, please go and buy physical media from one of your independent local sellers. Or if you're going to stream, make sure you visit official streaming platforms. If you're looking for official merchandise, go to store.tompetty.com. And if you're looking for merchandise for this show, please go to store.tompettyproject.com. Don't forget to check out the Tom Petty Nation and Tom Petty Fans Forever groups on Facebook, and go check out Channel 31 on Sirius XM, Tom Petty Radio. Until we meet again next week, keep listening to and sharing Tom's music. Try to be kind. Try to say I love you to someone at least once a day. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll be back with you next week to talk about the fan favorite first song from Echo, Room at the Top. Bye-bye.